All right. Welcome to Adrian and Ryan's Stories to Tell, a podcast where we talk about our background in music and just about anything else we want to talk about. My name is Adrian Clens.
And I'm Ryan Harrington.
All right. Well, we're excited to have everyone tuning in and listening. And this is a new venture for us. And I guess that's a good place to start. So, Ryan,
Yes.
in your words, I guess I would say, what the hell are we doing here? What are we hoping to accomplish with this podcast?
Well, we've talked a lot about this in the last couple of months, and I think there are a number of things we want to do here. And I think, first of all, we want to talk about music in general, and specifically, I think, our experiences in music, because we have a rich history of playing music together.
Yeah, 33 years, if I'm not mistaken. I was thinking about that.
33 years, my God.
1992 is when we met. So
I know.
My math is right, and I was never good at math, as you know.
33 years, my God.
I know.
Yeah, I feel really old now.
Yeah, me too.
We're also talking about specifically songwriting. We intend to speak a lot about songwriting, songwriters, the process of songwriting, and everything having to do with the creative side of creating music.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. I mean, and you alluded to it, but for those that don't know, you live in Germany.
Yes.
And how long have you been there now? Did you
Since
say
2006? So
2006.
At the end of November, almost 19 years.
That's crazy. I can't believe, speaking of getting old and time flying.
I know. And time flies in, and that's why we're doing this remotely, this podcast. So we hope that the technology works.
Yeah.
So we're also going to be talking about personal experiences in our lives, aging, getting older, and we're going to be doing that with a lot of humor, and a lot hopefully, and so, I think talking about life in general is what we're going to be doing as well.
Yeah. As you mentioned, I mean, you and I connected. Well, we've kept in touch through the years in those 19 years that you've lived in Germany, and every few years you make it back to the States. And a while back, I don't remember what year that was, but we did a few reunion shows with one of our projects. And but you were back here in the States a few months ago, and we tried to connect, and we weren't able to, but we started this conversation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we've had several months of really good conversations back and forth,
Yes.
and that kind of led to this idea of let's talk to people about all that we've seen and experienced. And
exactly.
Yeah, and so that's what we hope people will take away from this. And as we unfold this podcast, we're going to talk about all those things, and as you said, hopefully inject a little humor, and hopefully be able to let people get a glimpse at what it's like creating music, creating art, songwriting, all those things. And I like what you said too about just talking about getting older, things we've experienced. So that's what the hell we're doing here. Is we're going to be doing that, and we have lots of stories to tell, and hence the title of the podcast. All right.
Yes.
So, I think one of the things that we had talked about is just sharing with people how we came to music, how we got into music. And so why don't you start? Like, how did you find your way into the world of music?
Well, obviously the first and probably most important, jump into music was my family. Obviously my parents, both my mom and my dad, are very musical. And, so we would be, I remember from, like early on as a little kid, that, we'd be singing songs together. My dad played piano, and he'd be sitting at the piano. We'd be playing songs or singing songs like "She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain When She Comes." When I was, like a kid, like some of my earliest memories. So all definitely musical memories, and the extended family, pretty much on both sides are musical as well, and so. There was always music around. And, we talked about this too. We grew up in a different era where music was much more important than it is now. And, my parents, had an old record player for the first, part of my life. I remember playing records, and, we had a limited, record collection. But, my parents would be playing like Beatles and Beach Boys and stuff like that, which I don't like to listen to now. But
you traumatized from it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. Yeah, there was a lot of Beatles going on and stuff like that, and Mamas and the Papas and whatnot, and there's a lot of vocal music. I grew up with that, and then I remember I had to take piano lessons when I was 6. And I didn't want to. There'll be many funny stories later. Maybe we can talk about that in depth, and you'll be laughing. And then later, after I did that for a year, 2 years, I think, and then I got a guitar, and I more or less taught myself how to play. I took a few lessons, but not too many, and then got into like I said, the extended family was very musical too, and as my cousins Evan and Noel, and that they were huge musical influences for me, showed me the first CD I saw in my life, and that was Christmas. I don't remember the year; it was probably like 87, something like that. 80, I can't remember exactly, but we went up to Alexandria, Minnesota, for Christmas, and my dad was and I were enthralled with the CD, seeing a CD and listening to a CD and stuff and things like this. And they were playing Stevie Ray Vaughan, and that was the first time I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan. And obviously, for both of us, very big influence in our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so those were kind of that's the really truncated beginnings of my musical life. But I think for we both talked about this in depth. Growing up, I don't remember, I can't remember a day going without music. Would you say the same thing?
Absolutely. I mean, another thing you said that resonated with me is when you said that we live in a time where we grew up in a time where music was a lot more important. And, and I think, and we'll talk more about that, in this podcast, but I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, and maybe we're just like the old guys that, sit on the front porch yelling, "Get off my lawn," and we think the world is changing for the worst. But I mean, it does feel that way. Like music is different. But yeah, growing up, the same thing with me. Like it was just music was always present. And that's kind of what led me to music. It was everywhere. I mean, so my parents divorced when I was 3. And so I kind of was between two worlds.
Yep.
It's time with my mom's family, time with my dad's. But in both instances, like music was always around. I didn't have the same thing you did. You mentioned your father was musical, played piano.
And
my mom, your mom did too? Okay.
Yeah, she played the clarinet, and she will tell everybody that.
Okay. Well, my mom dabbles in piano. She still has a piano. She's kind of self-taught, and like sometimes at Christmas she would say, "All right, I'm going to play some songs," and we'd try to sing along. But I mean, it wasn't something that she did a ton of. I think she, wanted to learn more and tried to teach herself. But it was more about like just music was always playing. We lived. My mom and I lived with her parents, my grandma and grandpa Stockwell, on and off up until I was 10. And my grandma Stockwell, she had the radio playing 24 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating, in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so even if we had the TV on in the living room, you could hear the music playing in the kitchen. And then she would often sit at the kitchen table playing cards for hours, and she and I would sit and talk about the music. On my dad's side, same thing. Like he was always playing music. But the one weird thing, and I've told you a little bit, I have a cousin named John who's a year or two older than me that he and I were pretty close when I was younger, and he played me like Zeppelin, and I remember hanging out in his room, and he'd have like a lot of music posters, and he'd play me music, and we'd talk about it. But he and I lost touch, and he moved away. He was in Europe. He lived in Ireland for a number of years, started a blues band and you and I had our project, and we'll talk about that in future episodes. And it was crazy. Like years later, I found out he moved back to the States, and he was doing blues as was I. And it's just crazy. Like, so I didn't have the same musical talent in my family that you did, as far as like people playing instruments, but music was just always around.
Well, I wanted to comment too that that the same was that it was the same thing at my grandparents' house too, specifically from my mom's side, the boys' side. They always had I'll never forget the radio station out of Rochester, Minnesota called KNXR. I heard, unfortunately, that they ended transmitting, I think last year or something like that. And I think I told you about that. That was like the Sinatra crooner station. And, like they'd be playing those old like Sinatra hits with like, strings and stuff like that. And Dean Martin and Bing Crosby and stuff like that. And they literally, my grandma had that radio on from like, I think the time, that she woke up to, the time, at least until maybe she watched the news in the evening or something like that.
Was that an AM station by chance?
That was an FM.
Okay, it was an FM.
Out of Rochester, Minnesota. And so Plainview, Minnesota, that's about 25 miles away. And so that, was that was an FM. My grandfather had a woodworking shop, and he had a little transistor radio, and because he preferred to listen to country. And, and he always had some country station on. Now, I don't know if that was an AM or an FM radio, but it was like, one of those things that was like this big in the corner of his, woodworking shop.
Yeah.
And, he absolutely loved country and Johnny Cash. And that's where I get any country influence is definitely from my grandfather. And but also the Harrington side, both my grandfather and my grandmother were very musical, sang in the church choir, stuff like that. And loved music and supported music and tried to get all their grandkids to, to do stuff in music and stuff like that. And, we always had every Christmas, we had a Christmas pageant because there were 12 of us back then. And we had to, sing Christmas carols and, there are various photos of ages of us from very cute to annoying teenagers and stuff like that. And we had to do,
cool.
some Christmas pageant every year and stuff like that for Grandma and Grandpa.
I don't remember you ever telling me that story. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's
we did
funny.
I think the last year, I think Cassie my cousin Cassie convinced us that we were all going to go as punk. And so we because she was into like 80s, like punk stuff and like Prince and stuff like that. And, I think she dyed her hair or something like that. And I don't know how much Grandma and Grandpa enjoyed that one, but we thought it was cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's a lot of similarities. The one thing I would add about my musical journey is, this and people that know us know this, but I have a visual impairment. And I went to what was then the Wisconsin School for the Visually Handicapped starting in third grade and graduated from there. But now it's called something different. But music was a huge part of curriculum at the blind school. Like everyone was required to go through, music class, and choir and band were huge. But because I even had lead singer tendencies back then, I wanted to be a diva and the center of attention. So it's like I refused to join the choir, didn't want to be in the band, but I always wanted to sing. So we had Christmas pageants.
Did you have to be in the choir?
No. They as long as we all had music class, and that's another thing. I mean, do they even offer music classes anymore in schools? Like I feel like it's still there, obviously, but I feel like it's when they're looking for cutting stuff, they get rid of music programs and things.
I'm sure we have a lot of our old friends from UWEC that are music. I know. I studied music, so I know there's a bunch of them that could, probably fill up about 100 podcasts of this topic, and maybe later we can do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But so at the blind school, we always had a Christmas program, spring concert, and I learned early on that I liked to sing, and people seemed to like hearing me sing, and so I'm like, all right, I want to sing. And I remember the music teacher saying, "Why don't you join choir?" And I'm like, "I don't want to be in choir. I want to sing." So the blind school was a big influence too, because and I tried instruments. I dabbled in like piano, guitar, trumpet, trombone, violin. The one I stuck with the longest was piano for like 5 years, from like fifth grade to it was like third grade to eighth grade. I think I did piano. Yeah. But I always gravitated back towards singing because it was like the instant gratification thing. Like I could open my mouth, something came out, people seemed to like it. But when I would sit down and have to practice for an instrument, it's like, God, this sucks. I don't want to do that. So, but I really credit the blind school for a lot of that music, influence as well, because it was just everywhere. Like everyone was either in band, choir, did something with music. And even today, like we have reunions every few years, and it's a big part of the reunion programming is they have a talent show, and the choir performs and the band, and so that was a big part of it too for me.
Yeah, I can say the same thing. I had great music teachers in high school, and they were Don and Jan Fiscum. And they were the choir, and they were husband and wife. They're choir and band teacher for the people. Shout out to the people from Plainview, Minnesota. They all know who Jan and Don are. But they were fantastic teachers, and they were a huge influence too for me. Supported. I was in band and choir. Played trombone. Probably got way onto Don Fiscum's nerves about 1 million times. I don't think I put near the work into practicing trombone as I ever did playing guitar, but that was and I think that also kind of goes back full circle into music was more important because I know a lot of the people I graduated with that became music instructors in schools and stuff like that, and I see in social media how they're struggling to do what we grew up with, and I think we live kind of in the golden era of education in the U.S. in the golden era of the importance of music as well, and there was so much in like the 80s and 90s. There's so many different styles of music just alone that kind of popped up just in that
absolutely
time.
Memories go, I ran too much, your love.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you and I have talked about, and we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, in future episodes, but like, I think we got to live through the last great era of music.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, you don't see the same level of like stars, but also musicianship. I mean, you don't see that anymore. And I wonder how much that has to do with the moving away from education. Like we live in a sad time where it's the cuts and I think it really affects music.
I'm sure it does. We hadn't specifically talked about this coming up to this podcast, but I'm 100% convinced that everything is tied together with this. The general fall of the importance of music, and what we'll talk about in the future too is how we digest music today. Is the word that we came up with when we were speaking about this. With a big theme that you and I always talk about is like listening to a whole album, and versus today, it's gotten to the point where it's like a 10-second, sound bite, and somebody becomes a huge hit overnight on TikTok or and whatever else is, whatever platform of the month is, going on.
Yeah, and we'll spend a lot of time on that, I'm sure, in the future. I mean, just about like how you make a living in music is really influenced because like the streaming and all those things. Yeah. So I mean, we have some similarities and some differences. And the reason I lost it, and then I wanted to come back to it, first sign of being an old man, forgetting my train of thought, but. The reason I had asked you a while back about was it an AM station, because I had some memories of my grandparents sitting in the back of their car, and they'd always have that AM station that played like the oldies and like the easy listening stuff. And it was like the Sinatra and the Dean Martin and the it was either the back of their car or it was always in the dentist's office. You'd hear the AM radio that had that really good music from that era, and that too, unfortunately, has gone by the wayside. The way radio plays music as well, it's very frustrating.
Definitely.
I can't remember the last time I listen to a radio station, honestly, other than like public radio or something. Like, I can't remember the last time I tuned into a radio station.
Yeah.
It's just,
I'm right with you there because, obviously streaming has changed everything, but, it's also, just the availability of new music, because of the internet is something that's changed, the digestion of music as we coined this term.
Hold out of the road. I get down at 35. I only was on the radio. Baby, as sweet as wine. Big old tanks near empty. Almost the end of the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go a little off script because I just thought of something from our conversation. You touched on it a little bit, but how did you, when you were growing up as a kid especially, how did you digest music? Like, how did you, like, to give you a sense, I'll share, like, I used to sit in my room with my radio and a tape in the, and I would wait and record and make, like, these mixtapes.
Oh, yeah.
And I would spend hours and hours just digesting music. I used to sit, both my dad's side and my mom's side had great record players, records. I would sit and just listen to music. I would go to the library and I would just grab everything that looked interesting to me and listen to it at home, and sometimes, rip it illegally, put it on tape. But when I met you in college, like, I came to college with a huge tape collection of things I had recorded. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, it was such a big part of my life, just the way I listened to music all the time. And I'm curious if you had kind of the similar thing growing up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like I said, when I was really young, the first thing I remember is a record player. I think my parents probably had maybe, 20 records or something, 30, not that many, not like today, and tapes, I remember I got a Walkman at some point, and it didn't last too long. And my first tape that I got with it was Michael Jackson Thriller. Kind of embarrassed about that.
No, you shouldn't be. Actually, my mom, I remember my mom went away on she was dating some guy at the time, and they went away for a weekend trip, and she came back and she brought me Michael Jackson Thriller on vinyl and that bubble gum that used to be in the tube that you'd squeeze it. Like, that was her gift to me when she came back. So I had Michael Jackson Thriller.
Can you imagine if you still had that in mint condition, what that would be worth?
Oh my goodness! I can't. I have 2 copies of Michael Jackson Thriller on vinyl, and you might want to know why too. Well, because one, Billie Jean, had a skip on it, and I'm like, well, I can't have that, so I had to go out and buy another copy of it. But
that was a problem too with tapes. That you always had the old joke. But it was a problem that if your tape player ate your tape, and the wrong song, and you had that warbly effect or whatever.
Yeah.
And
but
you had to take the pencil and put it back, and wind it back. But if the tape was crinkled, it still kind of played. And I think I bought a number of tapes twice or 3 times because of that. Or later when we were driving and stuff like that. You'd be in a car and leave it. Tape on the dashboard or something like that in the hot sun in the summer, and then come back and you like all melted, and so but yeah,
I can just picture right now, like, young people like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah,
like, pencils and
like
tape.
Young people, they're like, what the hell's going on here? But definitely I remember making mixtapes, the old joke about waiting for your song to come on that you wanted to record, and the DJ would usually talk through it.
That used to drive me crazy. And then you'd be like, well, okay, I guess I'll record it for now and then hope I can catch a better version later. But I actually still think I have like a thing of tapes that I made still somewhere. I don't know if they work still, but I mean,
I told you at some point, like one of the moves we had in Eau Claire, to somehow, I don't remember which house it was, but all of my tapes were stolen. Because I had them in these brown paper bags. Because I remember I had my grandpa built me a CD and tape, like shelf thing, They had everything there, and we moved. And I don't remember, I just remember wherever we moved to. I think it was that place down by the river. What was the
Catherine Street?
No.
Was that Congress? Or
was that Catherine Street?
It was Catherine Street.
Yeah. I think there, because there's that house of like those dirt bags across the street and stuff like that. And
yes, I forgot. I also remember you used to hit golf balls into the Chippewa River sometimes after a few beverages.
Yeah, that was great. And so there's a lot of crazy stories about that place. But
we'll be telling lots of those stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the ones we can tell in the internet.
Yeah, the ones we can tell. Thank God there wasn't cell phones back then.
Thank God. Yeah. But And so anyways, I brought it. Like, I can't remember somebody. I think maybe you were with me, and we were moving like a couch in or something. We came back out and the tapes are gone, or I don't remember exactly what it was.
Probably was those dirt bags across the street.
Yeah, or somebody walking on the trail, like there and stuff like that. And so I lost all my tapes then, and that was like, in the CD days, CDs were, it was getting close to like going to the internet. And so, I never bothered buying them. But for me, what was really sad about this, especially now that I'm an old bastard, is that I had tapes of jamming with my cousin Noel that somebody took. And that's the one thing I really, because for the people that don't know, my cousin Noel passed away in 1998. And though we had some cool, in one tape, I think my cousin Evan was playing drums, and he could like play this weird, like I would say like Tom Waits jazz beat style drum, just faking it because he couldn't play. He's like, I'm not a drummer, I can't play, but he could. It sounded really cool. And then Noel was playing guitar and I was playing guitar, and somebody else was jamming with us, and those tapes are lost, and that's
so
like a big bummer, really big bummer.
Yeah, absolutely. Noel and Evan, we'll talk about them, I'm sure, down the road. Did Evan play? Because I used to go there with you on spring break, and remember we would like jam down in their basement. Yep. Was he drumming back then? I
no, he was. It was just like he was not a drummer. He just I think for some reason Noel was jamming with some people and had a drum set in that basement because they had a big old house there, and that and I think like Noel was like had a project or something like that, or was trying to start a band, and they had a set there because most of the time they didn't have a drum set. And so in like I don't know if it was Christmas or some holiday, but I was there and we were playing, and I think at the time Evan was living in Colorado or something like that, and he was back too, so it probably was like a holiday thing, and it was just like he just jumped on the kit and started slapping the skins, and it was cool as shit. Wish I still had one of those tapes.
That's a bummer that you lost those.
Yeah, that was a bummer, and and it was just kind of like, oh man, and and then the commercial tapes and stuff like that, I didn't care about it at the time because it was just like CDs. I had probably the old thing, like I think I bought like Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon like 20 times because every time we had a party somebody ripped it off, and stuff like that. So one of those things, but that's how we definitely the way we consume music was way different than today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny though, like everything seems to come back around. I mean, vinyl came back around, and now it like seems like tapes are kind of having a moment again, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, in the beginning of this year, I stumbled across a video about here in Germany how tapes are making a huge comeback for underground bands, because in Germany there's like the version of ASCAP or BMI. Here it's called GEMA. They pronounce it GEMA, but it's really kind of a pain in the ass to put out a CD, and it costs a lot of money. And so, like bands are like, just producing these tapes, because nobody can, you can do it yourself, and you can burn CDs too, but it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of, I read an article about that, and I went and started, I'm like, oh, maybe I should get a tape player again. And then I looked at the prices. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't get a tape player.
Well, I don't know what the thrift store situation is like in Germany, but it's funny because, well, as you know, I used to record like all our rehearsals, some of our
that's
shows.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I've got hundreds of tapes from different projects, but I had no tape player. And like you, I was like, well, I'll just get a tape player. And I looked at it and I'm like, well, they're not cheap. But I found one at a thrift store that works pretty well. So I'm able to listen to some of that. But you're right. I mean, when I lived in Eau Claire a few years ago, some of the bands there started putting out tapes again. And they would sell tapes at like shows. And so they're making a comeback too. So I guess everything comes back around. Hopefully, maybe the appreciation of music education will come back around. So these young folks can like... Yeah, it is, because technology definitely makes it a challenge. But
step on out, oh, let your love light shine. Step on out, girl, you're so fine. The pretty little baby, it's plain to see. Step on out and give it to me.
a little bit about, why don't you tell me and the listeners and viewers your recollection of how we met? So we've talked about how we got into music, but how did we meet?
I remember that distinctly. It was the fourth day that I was at UWC. I don't know on which day you came, but we ended up living in the same dorm, the same floor in the same dorm of Catherine Thomas Hall.
May she rest in peace. They tore it down a few years ago.
They did, really?
They did. I actually have a brick from it. You wouldn't have known this, but they sold bricks from the building, and you could make a donation. Oh. And so I wasn't living in Eau Claire, but I had a friend go and pick one up for me, and so I have a brick from Catherine Thomas. But yeah, they tore that down a few years ago, unfortunately.
That was a shithole. But
I loved it though.
I hated that place, but well, I mean, we had great stories there, fond memories of.
I think we pissed off a lot of the RAs. I know one shirt.
Yeah, we pissed them off, but I think they were like, I don't know. We pissed them off in like a cool way, as opposed to like other people just pissed them off. If that makes
you may
sense.
have pissed them off in a cool way, but I'll out myself. I went through a phase where I used to chew tobacco, and I used to like, for whatever reason, think it was cool to just like spit in garbage cans. And like, I remember RAs confronting me, like, dude, don't spit in these garbage cans. But I thought like, I'm fresh, new young adult, and I'm like, I'm going to do what I want. And I remember like sometimes they didn't like that very much that I would do that.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of things they didn't like that we did. But anyways, exactly how we met is, I still have this is ingrained in my memory. For me, it was the fourth day that I was there. I think so we got there a couple days, like the dorms opened up like a couple days, like a week before, I think classes started or something like that. And I don't remember if classes had already started or it was like the day before. But it was, it was the fourth day I was there, and I was playing guitar. I had my guitar, my electric guitar, and I was playing a Johnny Winter. And you just walked up. I had the door open. I was probably like, I just wanted to probably try to meet somebody, and so I just had the door open. You walked up and you're like, hey, that's Johnny Winter. And I'm like, you know what Johnny Winter is? And that was like the first like moment that I think that was just like an immediate bond, because I didn't expect anybody to know who Johnny Winter was in the dorm, and so that's how I remember it.
Well, pretty spot on from my recollection. I remember coming to campus about a week early, maybe 5 days early, and it was the first day of classes. And I know that because the last few years of high school, I was a gigantic nerd on many levels. I wanted to go into politics, so I used to wear a shirt and tie every day to high school, and I carried a briefcase, and that's probably why no one ever wanted to date me. They're like, but so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this in college. And so like my first day of college, I wore a shirt and tie, and I went to classes, and then I came back, and as you said, we were both in Catherine Thomas, second floor. I came on second floor. My bedroom was literally right by the entrance. And remember, we used to have those little keypads to punch in to get into our rooms. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I started punching in, and I heard somebody playing guitar, and I could tell it was live guitar, and I could instantly tell it was Johnny Winter. And I drifted down there, and I think I was wearing my shirt and tie. But I mean, And I said, yeah,
I don't remember
that's
that.
Johnny Winter. Yeah, that's Johnny Winter. And you're like, yeah, come on in. You were sitting on a beanbag chair, I remember, like playing your guitar along with the Johnny Winter album, Let Me In, I think it was.
Yep.
And then you say, well, come on in. And that started it. Like we just started talking music and it went from there. I did learn very quickly not to wear shirt and tie in college if you wanted to talk to girls. Because, I figure probably by the second day, I was like, I think I'll just wear T-shirt and jeans like everyone else. But that ended that fashion choice. But, yeah, so that's kind of how we met. And I often think about, fate, the universe, whatever. Like, me ending up in Catherine Thomas was a fluke because I had gotten a notice that I was going to be stuck in a overflow
Flowers?
space.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it may have been. They were going to put me in a TV lounge. They used to sometimes do the TV lounge where they'd put like bunk beds in a TV lounge,
Like
and that was your room.
5 people, yeah.
And because I went to the blind school, and this is one of the few times in my life I used it to my advantage, my guidance counselor at the time, Mr. Nash, said, well, why don't you call UW Eau Claire and explain, you have a visual impairment and see if they'll work with you. And I did, and they said, oh, well, we'll put you in Catherine Thomas. It's one of the 2 dorms on lower campus, and then you don't have to navigate the hill. And anyone that knows Eau Claire, there's the huge hill from upper to lower campus.
Yep.
And so because of that, I got into Catherine Thomas. And because of that, Catherine Thomas was known as kind of a musician's dorm because of its proximity to fine arts.
Yeah,
So
there are
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
the-
music majors.
Yeah.
There.
And so it just was luck that I was put in this dorm filled with musicians, including you.
I don't remember how I got into Catherine Thomas. I don't think I wanted to be in there. I can't remember. It's so long ago. 'Cause I think I remember you filled out like the thing, like where did you want to live? Like I think you had like a first, second choice type thing for the dorms there.
I don't remember that. Oh, okay.
I remember something about that, and I think I put a different dorm because I knew somebody that was like a year older than me, and they said, "Yeah, you want to live up the hill. The hill sucks, but it's a cool place to party or something like that." And I remember like I got like the letter, and my mom's like, "You're in," or she read it before me or something. She's like, I think you're in Catherine Thomas," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" I can't remember exactly, but that was, I think, I think I want to be in Towers or something. I can't remember.
Well, but Towers was the big one, right?
Yeah.
But we partied up on upper campus occasionally, but we did our fair share. Well, speaking of Catherine Thomas, and it was a good chance that you and I on Friday and Saturday nights would be in your room. And I mean, that was our routine, as I recall. Like we would often get done with class, go eat dinner in the lower campus cafeteria, and then we would end up in your room,
which was slightly better than the cafeteria on the upper campus.
Slightly better, although the one on upper campus, remember, had a Taco Bell. I don't know if you remember that. They had that little Taco Bell on the upper campus cafeteria, and so that it may have been later, like because I went back to school a second time. People may not know that.
I don't remember that. To be honest,
maybe it was on my second time back because I wasn't very focused on my studies the first time.
Really?
So I took a little break for 5 years.
Well, the viewers may not know that. I know that.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in future episodes. But there was a Taco Bell on upper campus at least the second time I was there. But you and I would always end up in your room, and it was mainly because my roommate and I didn't get along that well. And like,
who was your first roommate?
Jason Cooster. No, that's fine. I talked to Jason years later, and he and I, we were fine. We just, Jason was he liked to stay in his room, and I think he was a math guy, and he just was big into his studies, and I was not. So I think he looked at me as like this party guy that never like studied, and so I would come down to your room. You were a good student. You always focused on your studies.
I totally was doing it with smoke and mirrors in the first year.
Well, I mean, you always stayed on top of things. Me, not so much. But we would hang out in your room.
I just elected not to sleep. That was the difference, I think. So,
you had your roommate. He wasn't there that often. I mean, I remember him being there occasionally. He was a good guy. We got along
Chris
with him. But
was his name.
Yeah, Chris.
I forgot his last name, but he was a good guy. And then And then
I think
Chris Loken was
yes,
my
that's
second
right.
roommate, so.
The two Chris's, but
Yeah.
I think in both cases they gave us a lot of like leeway. Like I think they chose to be elsewhere because we would like hang out and.
Yeah, well, I mean, because we would be listening to music, but the first Chris, I think he was like living, I think partially with somebody or something like that.
Okay,
and so like, and whatever, and then Chris Loken, he was we sang in Statesman together, and then he was always hanging out at the fraternities because he wanted to pledge and stuff like that. And so he's always like, I don't think he ever pledged, but he always wanted to, or maybe he did. I don't know. I can't remember. But so he was always hanging out there, and so it was kind of like we always, had a place to hang in my room.
Yeah, well, yeah, you and I were often alone in your room, and you'd be playing music and playing your guitar. I wasn't yet singing. I didn't have the confidence yet to sing. So I often would just hang out.
You were singing like when Sinatra came on. You'd be singing.
Well, the Sinatra stuff I was comfortable with, but I used to we used to smoke back then, right? Cigarettes, by the way. And we would go out in front of Catherine Thomas and smoke, and I would like sing Sinatra to try to impress girls walking by, and I'm sure they thought, who's this idiot? But I was comfortable with the Sinatra.
Sinatra wasn't in, and we were, sitting out there you were trying to impress him by singing, later then Sinatra became in again, when the
well, like you said, everything comes back around.
So
everything comes back around.
But
but that I think we were lucky because we had that space and we used to listen to the tunes, but also we had those videotapes of Stevie Ray Vaughan, like
the
Live
El
at Austin
Mocambo,
City Limits, El Mocambo, and we used to just sit and we just
Robert
digest
Cray
that
and stuff like that. I had him on. I think we watched those like probably, I don't know, 30, 40 times at least. And so,
at least.
And so the Commitments, the movie, The Commitments, and stuff like that.
I haven't seen that in years. What a good
love
movie.
that. I still love that movie. I don't watch much television today at all, but I gotta watch that movie like once or twice a year.
I gotta go now. I'm gonna have to watch that. I haven't watched that in years. That is
such
a great movie.
movie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, every night we're in each other's arms, doing all things lovers always do. Yeah, you always kissing and hugging. Your kind of love is none but trouble. Take it easy, baby. You know you done fooling yourself.
Yeah, but that kind of started things for us as far as us working together. But I remember you wanted to start a band. I remember you.
Well, I mean, I was playing, like in freshman year, sophomore year, I was playing some jazz combos and stuff like that. And I remember one time I think I carried my huge Fender amp down to the Mandarin Club from Catherine Thomas. One hand my guitar, the other hand my Fender amp. That I'd use in the King Stakes later on and stuff like that. So how big that was. And so, and so I'd like carried it down to the Mandarin Club the first time. I knew nobody with a car. I didn't have a car either. And
that had to be like 2 miles.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At least 2 miles.
Yeah. And I just remember I walked down there and I got in there, just sweating from carrying. It was in the fall and it was cold out, but it was like carrying a fucking amp for like 2 miles or whatever it was. And I can't remember. I think it was Chris Bates. He's like, dude, you should have called me and told me how to pick you up or something like that. He was a bass player. He was really cool. He tolerated me playing guitar in that jazz combo for a couple of years.
That's great. I never knew that. I mean, that sounds like an old blues guy. Like,
well, I was
your
just
amp.
because it was like, I mean, because it was funny because I mean I was just jacked up because I'm like, I get to play in a bar, and stuff like that.
Well, I remember you were playing. I don't know when that started. Like with like Will Chopper and like you were playing in a band up at O'Leary's.
I forgot what that band is called.
I don't remember either, but it was
with Will Chopper and Dale Drevlo.
Dale, that's right, Dale. Yep.
And I played with them for like a couple of years, I think. So,
Was that when you were still in Catherine Thomas, or had we moved off campus?
No, we were off campus
Okay.
then, because I had a car at that point. I didn't have a car the whole time I was on
The old station
campus.
wagon.
Yeah, the old red station wagon. So
The red
old
station wagon.
Mercury
yeah.
Sable. So that was
Yeah,
awesome.
I remember that. We took a lot of equipment to gigs in that beast.
Oh
I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
That.
That
Yeah.
was an awesome car. Awesome car.
Yeah.
They don't make them like they used to. That thing, yeah. Because I remember, later the old speakers we used for the King Snakes, they were huge, old 3-way PV speakers. They were just bricks. They were huge.
Yeah, I remember.
Heavy as hell. They sounded good, too, but they were huge, and they had 3/4 inch plywood and stuff like that, so they're, that thick, and they're just I can't remember how much they weighed. They had to weigh over 50 pounds a piece.
Easy. Easy. Yeah.
And, and we could put all the equipment for a show in the car, like monitors, guitar amp, guitar, and stuff like that. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
I love that car. But no, I was playing Will and Dale, I think for about 2 years, mostly at O'Leary's. We, occasionally we'd go up north and play for some podunk biker bar or something like that, and so.
Well, I ended up
awesome.
working at, it was called Charlie K's was the restaurant that was attached to O'Leary's. And I was a host there, so I got to listen to a lot of music sitting as a host. And then I don't know if because of that I was able to sneak in, I was underage at that point, and listen to you play with that band. But
I just turned 21 there.
Yeah, I think I remember that too.
Yeah, they threw me in the pool.
Yes, because you came home that night, and we were living off campus. And I remember you were in pretty rough
Fifth
shape.
Avenue,
I remember
right?
that. Yep, Fifth Avenue.
Yep. So Michelle, who lived above us, picked me up.
Yes.
I'll never forget it too, because I had a final the next day at 8 in the morning. It was Dr. Cunningham, who's for the people in the music department. He was one of the music theory professors, and it was Baroque counterpoint. And I'll never forget this because I did not study at all, and it was Baroque counterpoint, like analyzing Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, and how counterpoint works and stuff like this. Really complicated stuff. A lot of music people hate this stuff. And I went in, I did the test in 15 minutes.
And did you pass?
I aced it.
See, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you were always a good student.
I was still feeling the effects from the turning 21 the night before. I can honestly say that. And that was finals week. And I went in, and he probably looked at me and knew, what I did. And the other people probably knew too. I went through, and I'm gonna die. And so I just wrote the test as fast as I could, finished it, and wrote everything down I could. And then I handed them, I don't even care if I flunked this test. And then, I can't remember. You know how, they posted your grades?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Totally, I'm pretty, they used to post them, on a door, right?
Yeah, or a bulletin board, outside of the professor's room, office.
And using your social security number.
Mm-hmm.
That was just one of the funny things is your ID, your number was your social security number, nothing about privacy and stuff like that.
Oh, no. No, it was a whole different world then. And I would always avoid going to see the grades because I knew I would tank it. That's what always drove me crazy is you and I would party together, but you always did well and me not so much.
Well, it was hilarious because I remember I had a number of finals that week that were pretty heavy duty, and and I was not at all concentrating on any of the finals. And I remember right before I think on that Friday I'm well, I better go see if they posted anything, and I was walking around, and I'm super surprised I got A's and B's on my finals. And it was just I was just and then the counterpoint one, I was just 100%. I'm how did that happen? It's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, so I some of it's blending together. I just remember when we still lived in Catherine Thomas, I remember you having conversations about you wanted to start a blues band.
Yeah,
and I remember you tried a few different times, and some of the people that you knew from the music program, you would talk to them about it. I remember Aaron Bray came into the picture, and Nick Pettis, and some of those guys.
later than.
Was that okay?
Yeah.
But I remember some of those you talking about it, like when we were still in Catherine Thomas.
Oh yeah.
And then you and I ended up moving off campus to, you had mentioned Fifth Avenue was our first dorm that we had, or first apartment that we had, and that's where you would like bring guys over from Statesman, different the music program, and you guys would jam. You would talk about music, and again, I was like a fly on the wall back then, just absorbing this. And it was cool to like watch you guys work and like learn a little bit. And again, I still wasn't like confident enough to get up and sing. Like you said, the Sinatra I was always okay with, the jazz stuff. But like anything outside of that, I just didn't quite have the balls to do it yet. But that's what the environment was like. I'm setting the stage for everyone, like the environment where, we were living together then off campus. And
I think what's important is that, like, music was the central part of
it was
pretty much everything we did, because we were partying all the time, but it was like, we would be like, the most important thing of the party was, what we were listening to, stuff like that. And what I remember is, the exchange of musical influences and stuff like that, because, through you, I got into Tom Waits, and stuff like that. And, before I never even heard of Tom Waits. And I think you were playing Bone Machine. I was like, what the fuck is this?
And I got into Tom Waits because of Mike Bauk, who was, so my second year of college, he was my roommate. And I think I stayed in the dorm like 4 or 5 times in that year because I was dating somebody. And
I remember.
I stayed off campus with her a lot. But the few times I was hanging out with Mike.
Don't say the names to protect the innocent. Or maybe we're the innocent ones.
Yeah. The few times I would hang... No comment. The few times I would hang out with Mike, he played Tom Waits, and Bone Machine was one of those albums, and I really dug it, yeah.
Well, I remember you played Bone Machine. I literally was like, what the hell is this? But then you played, I think, the early years or something like this.
There's the early years, volume 1 and 2 that we used to listen to a ton.
You were playing one of them, one of the two, and I'm like, who's this? And you're like, that's Tom Waits. I'm like, what? I didn't like Bone Machine at first, and now I kind of dig Bone Machine, but I wasn't ready for it. And
it's the same way though. I mean, you introduced me to like Taj Mahal and like a lot of Jimmy Buffett. Like you were a huge Jimmy Buffett fan, and but I agree with what you said.
Pleasure.
Like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Jimmy Buffett and Huey Lewis and the News are guilty pleasures.
Huey Lewis, that's good stuff.
Yeah, I still love it. So.
Music was always a part of that, though. Like the parties we'd have, we would always. I remember us having conversations about like what we were going to play. We would take turns being the DJ, so to speak. With some of those things, we even had parties in getting ahead of myself, but like the bars, like those little swing parties, and to emphasize swing is swing dancing, so no one thinks like freaky stuff. But we'd have swing dancing with the big band stuff, and everyone would dress up, and we would.
That was a blast, man.
It was a blast.
Some of my favorite memories.
I'm kind of proud of us because like there's a depth there that I think sometimes is missing. Like music was there, and even when we were just hanging out, we used to play the Saga hockey game. Remember? That?
NHL '94.
NHL '94. We'd play that for hours and drink beer and listen. We'd always have music on, like
the whole night
Stevie
long,
Ray. Like we would sit there and just always playing the music, and so. I really think that set the stage for the work we did later on, coming up.
And it was like, it was like, we like what we already said, we'd be playing stuff for each other, and then, but then it'd be like, we bring in like, hey, Robert Cray's got a new album out, or whatever, or just. It was just like it was such like we would anticipate releases of albums and stuff like that, and you were listening to way more than I was, still are, and so that's another topic we'll talk about later. More set in my ways with what I listen to, but and so it's just there's I think it you can't really remove music from our lives. In that time period, and even today, I think
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and I'm not trying to like say that we're better than anyone or toot our horns, but like I feel like there was something to it that's I think most people use music as background noise.
A lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, they just put it on in the background and it's there. But for us, it was like a key part of this. And I even remember like you would have people over that I didn't necessarily know, but they were often from the music program. And you guys would sit around and you'd talk about stuff, the music I hadn't heard. And like it's like everyone that was in our orbit, I think, cared about music, and that seeped down into everything we did. And I think that really continues today, as you said. Like it's just always such a big part of my life. And I think same with you as far as just, digesting music. And,
what we talked a lot about too is in the future we want to do podcasts where we also have guests of people that we played music with in in stuff like this, and there's we have a lot of people that we played in either King Snakes or Blues All Stars together with these people, and then we had our separate projects that we did not play together and stuff like this. And so, there's a huge orbit of like musicians that we know,
we do
in this world. Really.
Well, and that goes back to an earlier point I made about how, for whatever reason, whether the stars align, like, UW Eau Claire is known for its jazz program, the music program, and it gets some notoriety for that. And I assume that is one of the motivating factors that led you to Eau Claire.
Oh, definitely.
For me, I had dreams of, so I wanted to go into politics, but I also knew I loved music. And I've told you this story, but like I went to campus and I knew I was going to have a political science major. But when it was time to declare a minor, I said, well, I'll do a music minor. And so I went over to fine arts and I talked to the individual who was in charge of the vocal program at UW Eau Claire.
Dr. Beverly Dick.
Dr. Beverly Dick, and I met with her and I explained what I wanted to do. And I mean, she was nice about it, but she was just kind of like, really nice. What you're going to go into politics, but you want a music minor. What are you going to do with that? And I was just like, well, I like to sing. And she's like, okay, but you understand, like, here you're going to do more like classical music. You're going to have to be able to accompany yourself. And like, and I'm like, well, I played some piano. And she was like politely trying to like, well, maybe you want to think about something else. So I left there kind of discouraged. But again, because I was in Catherine Thomas and I had met you and there were all these other music people, and then you were introducing me to all these music people, it was like the stars aligned that I just happened to go to UW Eau Claire, which had a good reputation with music. I mean, if I had gone anywhere else, I don't think I would have gotten into music like I ended up doing. And so it's just crazy to think about that it worked out that way.
Definitely. I think, that obviously that, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get all, metaphysical about this or anything like that. There's some people that say like, no, you're meant to be a musician. Wherever you're gone, you'd have met the people, I don't know. I can't say if the universe operates that way or not, but, it's just kind of, the way I feel about that, it's a thing where I think it's, I think it is you get to a certain place and you have these influences of these people that come into your lives, or into your life. And I think these, we talked about talking about this, these experiences, form who you are.
Absolutely.
Baby, come on and kiss me like that. 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 Baby, come on and kiss me like that, like
that, like that. And it goes back to what we talked about at the start of this episode. Like you mentioned music teachers that had an influence on you. I had, Ms. Hujak and Mr. Terrell at the blind school. They're both still alive. I just saw him last summer. He's 90 years old. She's in her 80s. They're still playing music, and but they really played an influence in that as well. And so it's just crazy to think about. I do get more, I guess, metaphysical. I think you said, I mean, the universe, all those things lining up. That's more my speed. But I often think about that. Like, I applied to 4 universities and got accepted at all 4 because back then I was a good student. In college, alcohol, some of the temptations changed that for a while, but I was accepted at all 4. And I think speaking of, that's a Tom Waits song, isn't it? Temptation?
Yep.
I think, yeah.
At least the lines in it. I can't remember the name.
Yeah. But I mean, had I gone to any one of those other schools, I don't
Yeah.
think I would have done the music thing. But Eau Claire, it just fell into place.
One thing, I don't know. One thing I know you've told me about, and I think I don't know if this is an abrupt segue, but I think it's important. Is can you tell me about that music store that you said was such a big influence for you? Because you know we will talk in the future about obtaining music, and stuff like this is also different today with you just go to your phone. But you have I think a really cool story about, and I think it's also important for you to tell that huge influence in your life.
I appreciate you reminding me of that. Yeah. So I grew up in Beloit, Wisconsin. And as I said, music was such a huge thing for me, but there was a little record shop in downtown Beloit called Denzel's Music Emporium. And I had stumbled across it, and it was owned by this white dude, and he was probably in his 30s, but at that time, when you're younger, you think everyone's old. So he was like this hippie dude. Yeah. He was probably in his early 30s, but to me, he looked like old. He's like a hippie dude, like tie-dye shirt and, the round speckled, like the Tom Lennon kind of glasses. And the music store catered towards, like African-American music. I mean, it was literally you walked in and it was a huge blues section, a huge jazz, soul, hip hop. And then there was a tiny little section for top 40 stuff. And I just got to talking to him. I was looking at the blues section, and he's like, "Oh, you're in the blues." And it turns out that not only did he own that record store, but he had a blues radio station in the Beloit College radio. And he just started making recommendations. He introduced me to Johnny Winter. Actually, that's how I knew who Johnny Winter was. He introduced me to John Lee Hooker and Lightning Hopkins and all of those blues greats. And so, whenever I had money, I'd go down to Denzel's Music Emporium, and he'd recommend, check out this album, check out that album. And so that's where I came to college with a huge collection of tapes. And then I also, as I mentioned, went to the local public library. And anything that looked remotely blues, just based on the cover, if some dude holding a guitar, I'm like, oh, I'm going to check that out. And sometimes it was a dud, but sometimes I discovered some really cool shit. And as I said, I would take it home, and if I liked it, I would record it on my parents' stereo. Yep. But yeah, Denzel's Music Emporium was just one of those things I stumbled into, and it was a huge influence that introduced me to blues. I don't think I would have necessarily, because at that time I was listening to a lot of country because that's what my grandparents listened to. I listened to some Sinatra because that's what my mom and stepdad listened to, but I hadn't really heard blues. And it was actually Stevie Ray Vaughan's passing that introduced me to blues, because I was sitting in my basement and I was watching MTV, and came in, they interrupted the programming to announce his death. Yeah. And I hadn't heard of him, and then they played 2 or 3 of his videos as a tribute, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I went to the record or the mall the next chance I got and bought one of his albums. But yeah, just somehow I stumbled onto Denzel's Music Emporium, and that guy, he's still alive. And I recently reached out through social media to try to connect with him, and he didn't respond. I don't know if he doesn't check his social media, but he's retirement age now, and he's, older gentleman. Now he is an older gentleman.
Now he is old.
And maybe if he hears this, maybe he'll reach out, because I wanted to thank him, because he was one of those influences that taught me a lot about blues. He never steered me wrong. Every album that he suggested was a hit. I loved it, and some of them I still own.
That's cool, that he had a radio station too, or a radio show as well. And that's I think that it's an important thing, because my cousin Noel was, that to me. He was that person to me. And I don't know if knew this. He was a DJ at
Noel was?
Yeah, he was on the radio. He went to UW Superior, and Evan will correct me if I'm wrong. It was either Duluth or Superior. I think it was UW Superior, and he was on the radio station. He had a radio station, why do I keep saying that? Radio show for quite a while. And my cousin Evan can, fill in the details with this. But, he that's, he had this huge record collection and stuff like that. And he got stuff, from the radio station. And he was just always, I don't know how, but he knew like when something was coming out. And
that's really cool. I didn't know that about Noel.
Yeah.
Noel was definitely an influence on me too. Noel and Evan, both your cousins, we used to go there on spring break. I mean, talk about the ultimate, like a lot of our friends wanted to go to like tropical locations and party. We'd go to Alexandria, Minnesota, where it was cold as balls still in like March.
Yep.
And we would sit at their house and they had so much great music. And I used to always take a big brick of tapes and would record stuff at their house on their stereo to take back with us to Eau Claire. So they were, Noel and Evan, they were influences on me too, as far as like they had a lot of cool stuff. They had
and it was just like just that importance of these people that influence my dad was a huge influence on me for showing me new music too. Because like I said, when I was really young, they were listening to like Beatles and Elvis and Beach Boys and stuff like that, and Mamas and the Papas. But later my dad, like I've told you this, he introduced me to Lyle Lovett, and which, we'll talk later. Lyle Lovett is kind of the gateway drug to Texas songwriting.
Yes. I think Texas songwriting, and in some ways I'd say Americana music in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of that, Lyle Lovett was, I think, a pioneer, in my opinion, of a lot of that stuff. I discovered Lyle Lovett in high school somehow. I think I do know. Remember VH1? It was like the offshoot of MTV, the VH1 music channel. They used to have some show where they'd play like an hour of like I don't know what you called it back then. But now it's Americana, or alt country. I think I heard Lyle Lovett on VH1. Roots. And so I bought some of his early albums. Good stuff.
Yeah,
like
my dad introduced me to the Traveling Wilburys, which I love that first album. Talking about these influences and these people that do that, and it was my cousin, my dad that were, showing me. These were the people that were showing me until I met you the most, and diverse types of music too. Because, and my dad was really cool too because I got into Stevie Ray, Vaughan, through my cousin Noel, and then we bought a CD player. My dad actually convinced me when he saw it because Noel and Evan and my uncle, their dad, Jim Ryder, they had a huge Fisher stereo system, with a CD player, with
Okay.
And my dad was totally enthralled, and my dad convinced me to go in 50-50 and buy the same thing. We spent like $1,000. That was my hay baling money from the summer before. And he's like, we got to have one of these too. And I'm like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. And he's like, will you pay half? And I'm like, yeah. That was like, probably what, 11 or 12 or 13. I don't remember, but
that's crazy. I mean, to think about how much equipment was back then, like stereo.
Yeah, well, it was, it was $1,000 back then. So that was, way more than what the $1,000's worth today. And my dad he just had these, great ideas, and that was awesome. And I do not regret, paying half of that at all. And then, buying the first CDs, went to Musicland. I know it was Musicland in Rochester, Minnesota, in the mall. And I remember a CD, I think it was about $30 at the time. They were expensive.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I resisted CDs at first. I've always been that way. Like when something new comes out, I'm always the skeptic at first, and then I go all in later, and then I probably spend way too much. But yeah, my first CD was a Sinatra CD, and I was very resistant. But like they were the new thing, so eventually I caved, and I bought a Sinatra CD, and then that led to now probably thousands of them. But it is crazy to think about how much stuff, like the stereo equipment used to be, CDs used to be, and now you buy a song for $1.29 on streaming, and then what the artist gets, like how many cents of it. I mean, it's just crazy. We'll talk obviously more about that in future episodes.
Take it easy, baby, you just fooling yourself.
I think that's a good segue to kind of our last part, if you're cool with that. And you and I had talked about kind of doing this segment, maybe every episode. I guess we'll see how it feels. And, as this grows, I think we're hoping that people will start sending in suggestions and comments, and we can build more of an audience of folks we interact with. But one of the things you and I had talked about was just kind of sharing with people that are tuning into this, like, what are you listening to right now? What are you listening to? What kind of music are you listening to as we speak?
Thank you for sending me the link to, how do you pronounce his name? Colter Wall?
Colter Wall. Yeah. Colter Wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday evening, you'd sent me the link and I listened to that whole album and I was like, wow, that's a great album. And, I will listen to it again this evening. I think before this old ass goes to bed. It's, that's the first thing that I listened to. I think that's the first really new thing I've listened to in a long time, where I was like, that's some kick-ass music. Good stuff.
It is a good album. I mean, I listened to about half of it when it came out yesterday, and I figured you'd like him. I wasn't sure if you'd heard of Colter Wall, but
I'd heard of him, but I think maybe I've heard like a track or two or something like that when, I don't have Spotify, I have Tidal. And, sometimes if you're listening to something and the album goes to the end or whatever, and then it starts playing whatever the other
like shuffles.
Shuffle or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think I ran across something from him. And so I know recently, you probably want to talk about it. Recently, one of your big influences passed away.
Yeah, D'Angelo. So the R&B great D'Angelo passed away a few weeks back. I've had something about D'Angelo when his album Voodoo came out in 2000. It just really grabbed me. And, he was very much a recluse, and he only put out 3 albums in his short career. And it really hit me. I shared some of that with you. You've listened to some of it. I don't know why. I think it's because he's the same age as we are. I mean, he was 51, and so maybe that's why it hit a little harder, that we're getting to that age where people we know. Yeah. Speaking of which, just today, as we're recording this, the news that Todd Snider passed, which is somebody that you and I both really appreciated. We discovered Todd Snider back in college. Yep. And it was sad to hear that. We're at that age, though, unfortunately, where people are starting to pass. But D'Angelo is something I've been listening to a lot lately since his passing, and that is, I've always had a thing for R&B. So another artist, Daniel Ceasar, is an artist that just put out a new album a week or so ago, and his new album I've been listening to, and then the Colter Wall thing, I shared that with you. Yep. Those are the biggest things right now, I'd say, is the D'Angelo, that Daniel Ceasar, and then the Colter Wall. For me, and you referenced it, like I always have music on in the background when I'm working, and I like to have it on shuffle and like discover new things, and I'm always looking for new stuff. It's always been that way with me. I know you mentioned you're kind of you stick with what tried and true, the things that really have touched you, and
but
there's nothing wrong with that.
I did want to say one band I kind of have gotten into in the last couple of weeks, because one of the instrumental members of the band passed away. The musician is Flaco Jimenez. I don't know if you know the band at all.
I don't think
Flaco
so.
Jimenez was like the accordion god of conjunto. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Down in Austin, Texas, a lot of people that know me now know that most of my musical roots don't run through Minnesota, but rather through Texas. Not that I want to live there, but no.
Have you ever been to Austin? I've never gone.
Yeah, I have.
Have you?
Yeah, yep. I moved Mike Gerard down to Austin. That was
I didn't know that. Okay.
Texas, but no, I would definitely go back to Texas, but my musical roots definitely lie there now, or at least a good portion of them, obviously starting with Stevie Ray Vaughan. But and so Flaco Jimenez, he played accordion a lot also for Dwight Yoakam.
I love Dwight Yoakam.
And I've gotten into Dwight Yoakam too in the recent years. I never listened to him when we first started hanging out. But he played accordion, I think, on a couple of his songs that I saw in Austin St. Limits, and that's how I kind of got into Flaco Jimenez. And then he was in a band called the Texas Tornadoes with Doug Somm, and they did their biggest hit, I think, that most people know is from that movie with Kevin Costner, he was a golfer. Remember that one?
Yeah, Tin Cup.
Tin Cup, yeah.
Yep. That was a great soundtrack. I think Los Lobos was on that soundtrack. I think there was a lot of good stuff on that soundtrack.
There was a lot of I think conjunto's like the word for like Tex-Mex down in that part of the world. They got Flaco Jimenez is the accordion player, and then like Freddie Fender's the guitar player and singer. Flaco sang too, and then Doug Somm sang, and they wrote a lot of stuff, in Spanish and in English, and I've been listening to some of that live stuff recently and really digging it.
That's cool. I'll have to check that out. I've heard of Texas Tornadoes, but well, you mentioned Freddie Fender. Isn't he, you and I have talked a lot about Charley Crockett over the last few months. And I think, isn't Charley Crockett and Freddie Fender from the same city, I think, in Texas? I feel like Charley Crockett talks about him all the time.
It could be. I'm not sure. In like Freddie Fender, it was kind of funny because the video I saw, he wasn't even playing a Fender. But I don't know. I don't know if that's how he got his name. I kind of got, because I've been on a huge Guy Clark thing in the last 5 years, and got into some more like lesser known Texas songwriters and stuff like that through Guy Clark. Kind of go full circle, my dad got me into Lyle Lovett, and I didn't even know at the time, but he was covering Guy Clark songs and stuff like that. And so got into like Townes Van Zandt and stuff like that. So,
well, he had that one album, Lyle Lovett, like a double album of all Texas songwriters. I don't remember what it was called, but we used to listen to that.
Step Inside This House.
That's right. Yep. That's it. That's a great album. Yeah. Well, you introduced me. Well, I'd known about it, but you had mentioned it. I think, about the documentary with Guy Clark.
A little funny tidbit. Did you know that Step Inside This House is Guy Clark's first song that he ever wrote?
I did not know that, no.
Yeah, and there's some video of Lyle Lovett saying this at some writers' convention. He brought his guitar and played the song, and he's like, Guy Clark, this is an example of somebody's first work, and Guy Clark never recorded it. He didn't even like it. Wow. And Lyle Lovett is like, that's just not fair that, when somebody writes this is their first song.
Yeah, no kidding.
Find the video with Lyle Lovett. It's
I'll
awesome.
have to check that.
He says it much better. But
you and I had, Without Getting Killed or Caught, that documentary about Guy Clark was really good, awesome. And I encourage people to check that out. Yeah.
Stuff like this will, just to, kind of more in an organizational note, we'll be putting these links to these things in the comment section, of where we put these videos up. So anything we talk about, you can go click on, like D'Angelo, Guy Clark, Lyle Lovett, stuff like this.
Well, and the last question before we wrap up is, what are you working on currently in the music realm?
Well, I think big news is that we are back working together.
Yes.
Would you like to maybe say a little bit more about your journey into getting back into music?
Well, so again, some people know, but I had thyroid cancer back in 2022, and they removed the thyroid. And when I got done with that surgery and recovered, my singing voice never quite came back the same way. And it's probably mostly psychological. I've seen specialists, and I was working with a vocal coach for a while, and they stuck a big camera down there, and they said, well, we don't really see a lot of structural things. There's like the muscle tension that's affecting like vocal range. And so for a couple years, I hadn't really been able to sing. And so I was kind of like trying to like resign myself to, well, maybe I had a good run, maybe that's it. And I actually started doing some writing. I wrote a little memoir, which, I finished that and trying to maybe see if I can get that out there. But that was my creative outlet for a few years, was the writing piece. And, Ryan, you and I have kept in touch. And but when we started that conversation back in July about, just life and music, and you played a big part in like encouraging me to take a stab at singing again, and slowly but surely I'm getting back there. And it's a lot of learning to relinquish some control, and because my voice isn't the same, it's different, and I don't know if it'll ever go back to where it was. And you and I were talking about this just yesterday. Like, some of it is getting older and your voice changes, but
definitely.
So I mean, it's a matter of like figuring out like what does my instrument do and learning how to navigate it. But so that's me getting back into the realm of singing, back in the saddle. So and you played a big part in that, encouraging that. So we're doing a little work there together. And I don't think we want to let the cat out of the bag today, but we got some things coming down the pike.
I uploaded the song today.
All right. Well, and so we'll, I guess we encourage people to stay tuned. Yeah. We'll post things on social media and that when the song's out there, and then we have some other things that we're working on. But specifically, though, I mean, so there's the song that you just mentioned, but other things that you're working on. I mean, obviously, we got this podcast. That's news. Like, we're doing this.
Yeah, but the big thing, I think, is podcasts. In like a little thing for me, my daughter Leslie Ann passed away in 2023, and obviously, the immediate time after that, I didn't do it much with music, and. My thing was last year about this time, I'm like, I got to get back writing and recording and releasing music. And so, and I started doing that in the end of 2024, and then I kind of ramped it up this year in 2025. And then Adrian and I have started, speaking about, in the beginning, we were just kind of, just talking about
shooting the shit.
Shooting the shit. And then, it was kind of like I can, if I can be so bold as to say, I just had sense that Adrian was wanting to get back into singing. I don't know, maybe you thought it was different or something like that, but I just had this feeling that you're like, you needed this. And I'm just like, yeah, he's got to sing again. And I don't remember exactly how we phrased it, but I think I was just like, dude, just give it a rip, or grip it and rip it. Something like that.
Well, no, yeah, you said something to that effect. Grip it and rip it. Let's just give it a shot and see. And you had given me, some equipment a few years back, and you were talking about Noel being on the radio, and I had a radio show for a year, and you had given me some equipment, and I still had that equipment, and so I pulled that out of storage, and we've just been giving her a shot. And I did need it. It definitely was. I like I said, I was like, I was trying to get myself to the place emotionally, like, okay, maybe I'm just never going to sing again. And I had a good run of 30 years singing. And so that it is what it is. And then you kind of came back in a very encouraging way, just said, just give it a shot. It doesn't mean it's going to be put out. Just try it. And that's what we've been doing. And so, as you said, you got a song that you wrote that we worked together on that will be coming out, and then this podcast. But you got a bunch of other things in the pike as well, and then some stuff that we had written back in the day for the King Snakes that we never got to record. We're talking about doing some of that, and I've got some things like I put out a solo album in 2019, 2020, and then of course COVID hit, and that changed that. And then getting thyroid cancer. But so I had a bunch of stuff that I was getting ready for a second album. And then since you and I have been talking, there's something about that creative process, just like talking about it. Suddenly it's like almost daily I'm getting different little snippets of song ideas and just some of that I send to you and some of the stuff you send to me. And this is what we've done for 33 years. Like we've always had that connection to feed off each other and just and I think it really works for us. And I don't want to be presumptuous, but I think people like what we do. I mean, they enjoyed it back in the day at least, and I hope that they will moving forward. But
so it's great to be getting back into be creative and collaborating together. And
absolutely.
And so I think this podcast will be a really cool. Obviously, we'll be talking about what happened in the past, but we're also going to be talking about, what's going on now, too. And not only from what we do, but also other musicians and some of our friends, that are active today and stuff like that. We'll be talking about them, maybe with them here on the podcast as well. And so that's kind of, this is podcast 1. We're going to see where it goes, but obviously there will be some, evolving going on as to the format of the podcast. But that's kind of what we've set out to do.
Yeah, I think, and if I could put a period on the sentence, there's a few things that, you had referenced, if you don't mind me sharing, when we started this conversation, you said, and I agree wholeheartedly, we're entering the last chapter of our lives.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you had said, you know what, in my last chapter or the last 10 years or whatever I got, I want to be as creative as I can. And that really resonated with me. And like I said, with you kind of encouraging, like, just give it a shot with the singing. It's like, all right. Yep. And it's like, I agree. Like, this is it. Like, we're coming down the pike here. We're 51.
What I said is, I think what you're referencing is what I said is that I think I'm in my last decade of good creativity.
Yeah, that's
is kind of the way I view it personally, that, 50 to 60. Anything after 60 is just icing on the cake, if you're still creative. I'm not saying you can't be creative after 60. I just think that, a lot of times, in general, things just slow down. So
unless you're like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and, their 80s. but of course, I don't know about
they keep doing it. I don't know how creative it is. But
yeah. But that really resonated with me, and I think that's part of this, like what we're doing here, like just that trying to do that. And then a theme came up from today that I keep thinking about is that importance of the mentors that shaped us.
Yeah,
and you've talked in my conversations, you and I, about legacy, and I think for just being able to leave behind a legacy for others, I hope, and again, I'm not trying to be arrogant to say, what we did is so amazing, but you never know. I'm glad you brought up that Denzel's music you pour him. Like, just some random guy I stumbled into a store and he's like, hey, check out these blues albums.
Oh yeah.
Like we hope that somebody stumbles across these podcasts and the work that we've done, and maybe it inspires them to create and to make art. So I think that's our aim. And I think I think that sums it up. Like what we're doing here, we're trying to embrace that last burst of creativity and hopefully leave a legacy and inspire others to embrace art, whatever their art may be.
Yep.
All right. Well, there we have it.
We have it. First podcast.
First podcast in the can, and we hope people will keep coming back. And we got a lot of stories to tell. That's the bottom line. All right.
See you next time.
Yep.
If all of us women, man, I'd have me a whole lot of love.